you have a question?
Do we have to do math on this?
If you have a fade that's like 5 minutes long, yes, you're going to have to figure out how many seconds in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's only if you do that do you have to do math.
No.
Actually, I lied. What did we talk about last class? We talked about the power formula, right?
Yes.
So you guys will have to do math in this class because you'll have a test that has you figure out the power formula, right? Unfortunately, there is math in lighting. There is a little bit of figuring it out. We discussed the power formula last time. You guys have to know how many things you can plug in so you're not blowing things up or catching things on fire.
That's something important.
Yeah, so you have to think about that as you're plotting shows. Like this week, on top of Salome, I'm working on another show, and I have 2 different capacity dimmers. So we're taking a little segue here, guys. So I have 2 different capacity dimmers. I have a 2.4K dimmer. And then I also have a 1.2K dimmer. And basically I have to think about the fact that I can plug less lights into that than I can that. And 2.4K means 2400 basically.
What's K mean?
1,000.
K means 1,000?
K means 1,000.
Okay.
Anybody who deals with lots of money knows that, right? So 1,200. So that's how many watts I can basically put on those dimmers. That's my capacity. So I need to know how many par cans can I put on this one? How many par cans can I put on that one? How many source 4s? How many ERSs? How many 6x12s? So I need to know the wattage of my lamps to be able to know how many I can plug into each of my dimmers, and I've got different cases depending on the dimmer. So it's one of those things that you guys have to think about. So I have to use my little power formula to figure out how many lights I can put on it. What was the power formula again, you guys?
V equals
VA. Equals VA. So watts is equal to volts times amps. So you will be doing math on your test just to refresh your memory. And if I ask you to solve for volts, like how many volts is it for blah, 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 how do you solve for volts?
Divide by amps, both sides.
So it would be watts divided by amps equals how many volts you would get, right? Because if you're solving for something, basic algebra says you would divide both sides, and then those cancel each other out. So hopefully most of you have had basic algebra by now. It's not always the case, but I'm hoping. And again, if you had to solve for amps, same idea, right? So if you have to figure out how many amps your circuit can handle, it would be divided by volts, right? So those are things that you guys should know for your quiz, because that will be on your quiz. It will ask you what the power formula is. It will ask you how many, it will probably tell you like how many watts I'm running an ERS and how many can I plug into a circuit if it's a 15 amp circuit or a 20 amp circuit or something like that. And you guys will have to solve it and tell me the answer. Okay? So I just wanted to refresh your memory that we talked about that last class. So yes, you will be using math in this class, unfortunately. All right, going back to this. So time, yes, it's in seconds. Yes, you have to do a little math if you have like a 5-minute or a 10-minute fade. Figure out how many seconds that is. Okay? So the keystrokes, let me just make sure you guys have a little cheat sheet of the keystrokes for that. So again, there is a hard key for time up here. So you would press, if you're in the queue you're in that you want to change the time on, all you have to do is hit time, and then however many seconds, like let's say, I'm going to give you an example of 5, or let's say we're doing a split fade, you would hit the slash key, and then 10, which would actually be, I'm actually not breaking down these double digits the way I should, it should be 1, 0, and then it would be star. Or enter. Okay? So that would be, so that's an example of a cue that's up in 5 and down in 10. So that's my example for you guys.
Where is the time key?
It's up here. So this is the bottom right-hand corner of the board with the numeric keypad for bringing channels up and down. And then right above it is another section. You can see there's kind of sections of keys on the board. Time is there, and slash is up there. So when you're modifying your times, you're in the upper right-hand corner of the board. Yeah?
So those things will only be there, they'll be on other buttons that are labeled.
There's other buttons that are labeled, but we probably won't get to use it. There's going to be a lot. You guys, there's a ton of buttons on this board that we will probably not use in class because we're only doing very simple cue recording and very simple playback. One of the reasons I gave you guys this sheet is that some of you guys will be like, for the last project, I want to do a chase effect or I want to do something fancy. And this kind of gives you a very introductory view of some of the things you can do on the board. So we'll try to highlight the few things that you're going to do. But otherwise, this is, some of it's for those of you who like to get a little crazy and a little more into it and do some fun things by the last project. Yeah?
Is this key format universal on every board, or?
No. Yes and no. I mean, there's almost always a numeric keypad on each board, and then there's like a recording or a time setting section. But I actually do not like the layout of this board and the board that are in the other spaces. These boards are a little bit older, and I find that the layout to find the basic keystrokes is a little hard to find things like the go-to button. It's a little easier on this board than the other board, but like on most boards it's really super easy to find because you use that all the time. You're jumping around, you're editing cues, you're jumping to different section of cues, but here it's hard to find. There's also a dimmer button that's a little harder to find, and the layout's just a little funky to me, but it's kind of similar. Syntax is a little different. It's kind of like jumping from a Mac to a PC. You can still do a lot of the same things, right? But you have to find where the commands are and figure out the syntax is a little different, that kind of thing. It's the same thing on a lot of these lighting consoles. You jump from board to board, because like I said, this is very uncommon. It usually says enter. It's like an enter key. So, and there's usually, you guys can see what you're typing. When you look at the main screen, there's a little line where you can see exactly what you're typing. And if you type the wrong thing, just so you know, the clear button is kind of like a back button. This will be your friend. If you mistype something, the clear button is like a back button, backspacing, to clear out mistypes. So one of the things you want to do is start taking a look at the screen and watch what you're typing to make sure you're hitting the right number, the right command. It'll also beep at you if you hit something wrong, and in red it'll say, can't take that key here, or that number is too high because you've hit 3 numbers and there's only double digits available or something like that. So one of the things to do is if you mess up, take a look at the screen. It might tell you what you did wrong. But as far as this being universal, some things yes, some things no. Numeric keypad's fairly universal. Number of submasters on boards changes, like it goes all over the place. There's boards that have way more submasters, way less submasters, some that don't have any submasters at all because they do virtual submasters now. They don't actually have anything manual, that kind of thing. So there's lots of variations on this. And of course, it's like Macs and PCs. They actually have boards that are run more like visually so that you can drag and drop like your cues and do different things like that. And they do also have PC programs to run lighting systems on now too. So there are computer programs out there, and you just need a little DMX data interface to run. Like you could run our main stage or this theater from your laptop if you just have an interface from your laptop USB to a DMX interface. So you get a little box that converts your USB signal to DMX, and you can run the show in here off your computer. In fact, we also have laptop software to run these consoles as well, so you can kind of set them up remotely and do that. So, but what we find is that ideally the consoles are much more user-friendly to being like right there and doing it at the time. There's something about being able to put things on the handles. It's kind of like being a musician and having the piano keys right there. You can put lights on the submaster so you can grab them and run them right up right then and have the looks right there. So that's one of the reasons we use lighting consoles versus just a computer, because you have those handles to bring up, bring down, especially if you're running a show live. It's kind of like you're improvising along with the show, that kind of thing. But yeah, a little bit universal, but this is a little more old school in some ways. All right, so does the time syntax make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Now, if you are not in the cue that you want to edit, then you just need to use this button. Like if you're in Q1 and you want to edit the time on Q3,